diga rogadka labada qarne kala dilaamaya dabayaaqadii kii tegiyo dihine soo foolle dagaalada sokeeye ka dhacay degelka Soomaali dilka iyo dhibaatooyinkiyo takharadu geystay duqaya barbaariyano dumar waa su'aalaya dacwad laysu kaashadoono dan u malaynaya dadaaliguma baaqane muddaan deeya muurtaase da'deedayga weyn xaajadan doon isleeyahaye.
In 1991, after years of brutal civil war and oppressive dictatorial rule, the regime of President Siad Barre came to a bloody end. It marked the end of Somalia as a nation. In the aftermath of war, the country was devastated in more ways than one. Most of the infrastructure had been destroyed, with communication systems down, and schools, factories and hospitals ransacked. A very high number of anti-tank and anti-personnel mines were either littered around or buried below ground. As another legacy of the war, an enormous arsenal of heavy weapons and personal arms existed in the country, which now fell into the hands of hundreds of thousands of largely traumatized youths who began to pave the way to lawlessness. Acts of looting and senseless killings terrorized the population and led to a breakdown of the economy. A decade of warlordism followed in the southern part of the country, with a multi-million-dollar UN peace initiative called UNISOM having failed miserably to help establish a sustainable peace in 1992. While the UN intervention had been concentrated on the south of Somalia, the north was left to its own devices. The emergence of various peace initiatives followed, with communities organizing themselves in regions to build the country up again. In many cases, these state-building efforts evolved from the grassroots upwards. In 1991, as one of these initiatives, the Northwest declared itself as the Republic of Somaliland. A working government was restored, and a decade of bloodshed and chaos came to an end. Although recently Somalia's political landscape has changed, with the election of a new central government, there are valuable lessons to be learned from Somaliland's development over the last decade. This film attempts to capture the process that has brought peace to this part of Somalia.
The people of Somaliland realized that they're not going to wait for anybody. They're not going to wait for international community. That they're going to go ahead and build their own societies, their own homes, their own lives. They went ahead and just began to work. No aid, no assistance of any shape. They went ahead and built their own homes, their own community. The city you see at the present time is built by the people, and people power, people resource. The private sector, it's thriving, it's moving. That's what it's getting the government going, the public going. You see the peace. It's really a credit to the Somaliland people. No international community, none in my viewpoint, owes that credit to it.
We managed to totally demobilize the clan militias and incorporate them into our security forces. So we were able to collect all those horrible machines of destruction like battle wagons, because the country was awash with arms. This is a very expensive venture. It consumes about 80% of the government revenue, but it's worth being.
However, peace did not come automatically. During the first 4 years after the defeat of Siad Barre, Somaliland underwent a series of intra-clan battles for control of resources and power. In order to end these struggles and achieve sustainable and lasting peace, the people of Somaliland went back to the traditional peace process. This process is based on including all the stakeholders in the debate and agreement on peace issues. Firstly, peace had to be established between the major clans in the north, which divided into those who had supported the Barre regime and those who'd fought against it. Once this was achieved, more conferences were held to manage intra-clan fighting. The series of peace talks was convened by the traditional elders called Gurti of the northern clans and succeeded in resolving armed conflicts which had been breaking out sporadically.
The system we have followed is what you might call bottom-up approach, grassroots level approach, solving contradictions between the various neighboring clans in the traditional way. And from there we moved into what you call the shir. This is a massive conference with thousands of participants, everybody participating in the decision making.
This process helped to respond to the strong mistrust amongst Somalis for government institutions, which had been one of the major obstacles to the full restoration of a functioning administration. To get people to work together again, relations had to be carefully mended.
For a people who have never known anything but a state that abused them, used its security services against them, used its police and its armed forces really for the benefit of a clique and not for the people at all, and in fact whose legitimacy was based not on the will of the people or the acceptance of the people. The legitimacy of the Somali state was based upon the indulgence of foreign governments and donors who were prepared to underwrite the Barre regime rather than any kind of public consent. There was no social compact. The government was divorced from its own population. Somalis had come to view the state as abusive, as predatory, as hostile, and so they wanted to make sure that a strong state would not emerge that could be abused, that could be taken over by others, be used against them. And the result of that has been the decentralization, the fragmentation of Somalia since the collapse of the Barre government.
The peace talks were successful in compensating groups which had lost livestock or kinsmen, selecting a new president of Somaliland, establishing security arrangements in the region, and formulating a national peace charter. The intellectual elite was drawn into work alongside the elders to help with hammering out technical problems relating to local administration, as well as the drafting of accords. Thus, a blending of old and new conflict resolution management was achieved.
I remember in the Borama conference, which took not 3-4 days, months, people sitting there, months, negotiating and discussing. And when they hit a block, saying, let's come back tomorrow. Let us look at it this way. I remember the elders and the people who were meeting in Borama did not even have food to eat. And in some instances, calls were coming to us in which the people were saying, this long period of time in which could you please guys look for something they can eat? Time was not European time. It was African time. It was Somaliland time. People were taking the time to iron out issues, to find consensus.
We stopped the war because everybody had lost a lot and there were no winners. When Mohamed Sia's government collapsed, we decided we needed to focus on our own interests. We declared a ceasefire. Traditional leaders on both sides started talking with each other. We communicated through letters that were delivered by women. Everyone started questioning what their interests were. This all happened through our own initiative. And we didn't get any funding from the government for this peace process. To feed us, we used our own animals. We held 45 conferences in Sonad. The first one was the one where we declared the ceasefire. From here onwards, the momentum of peace started. It took a long time, 1.5 years. Delegations of elders communicated because the militiamen did not trust each other. It started under the shade of the trees in true Somali tradition.
So this seems like this can be one area of immediate influence.
The peace talks were facilitated by an initiative of women who convinced the traditional leadership that they had a vital role to play if they could only bridge their differences. The women did this by acting as intermediaries between the clans.
Women can gather vital information that men can't get hold of. This is because they can go to different tribes, like the clan they belong to, and the clan of the man they are married to. Men can't do this, as they are only part of one clan. So we can say that women do not belong to one clan, but to many clans. They are like doctors without frontiers, so they can contribute to war and peace, depending on their choice. They can play an important role in these matters.
Despite intense lobbying, women here have yet to be formally admitted as equal players in the political arena, but they have found other ways of influencing those around them.
In Berbera, when the fighting was on, women from different clans went to the opposing sides, lobbying and reciting poems to influence them. And it worked very well. On the other hand, those who were educated wrote articles in newspapers in which they threatened that if fighting did not stop within 10 days, there would be problems. We advised all women not to cook food at home, except to feed the smallest children. Fortunately, the men were alarmed by this. And so they quickly organized a meeting in Berbera, where an agreement was signed.
Women in Somaliland acted as checks and balances to the society. They stated needs and made sure those were implemented. As one of these initiatives, women lobbied to rebuild public structures needed to uphold law and order. Services like the police had to be re-established to secure the emerging stability.
We used to have no police. It was the women who first proposed we create a police force. They were the ones who supported, encouraged and wrote proposals for the creation of such a force in order to maintain the peace in Somaliland. They contacted different social groups and clans that shared a common goal, and they demonstrated that it is not only men who have an interest in the future of the country. They made it clear that women are a very important part of society, and that they have a right to reject what harms them and their children. In this way, they shared their importance and the role they can play in every aspect of life.
With many parts of society working towards peace, smaller bilateral peace meetings between reconciling clans eventually culminated in a meeting of over 400 participants. This conference managed to produce an accord to institutionalize the ceasefire through promotion of free movement, free trade, access to common grazing and water sources, and resolution of property disputes. Slowly but surely, the different fractions of leadership have evolved into a government. People have come to respect the government's role in mediation and are supporting its developing institutions. The peace conferences developed the basis of a social compact, Ocher, which ensures that the government rules by consent and provides checks and balances to prevent the abuse of power.
The Somali style of democracy is based on consensus. And what we find in most of the Western democracies is a type of governance based on majority rule. Consensus is very unwieldy. It's slow to develop. There's many drawbacks. But majority rule, certainly this stage in Somalia, Somaliland, does not work. Any group, in a sense, carries a veto. If it doesn't like an agreement, it can opt out. And in an extreme case, this can lead to conflict. In Somaliland, particularly the last war, 1994 to 96, really had to do with a group saying, we don't agree with this charter, with this hair. We don't agree with the way it's been arrived at. Initially, they were just uncomfortable with it, but when they felt that disadvantage they saw in the agreement could be used against them, they opted out. And with a little prodding from the outside, picked up weapons, and we had a 2-year conflict. The need, after that conflict, to bring everybody back around the table and say, okay, there were problems with this whole compact. Can we now renegotiate it? Some concessions were made on both sides, and stability returned to the country. That was a need to build consensus again.
The ability of the international community to understand complex post-war situations and to formulate appropriate policies has improved in recent years, but the capacity to put this knowledge into practice remains low.
What I have noticed is, as far as the work of international organizations in Somaliland or in Somalia as such is concerned, is that there is no much investment from the side of the international community in peacemaking and peace building. Most of the effort is focused rather on projects of relief and rehabilitation. The international community, international organizations are not very much conscious about conflict and development. They're not really conscious about how can they use development in order to sustain peace, in order to build peace.
Any external assistance needs to recognise the sensitivity of a post-war recovery process. Ideally, it should supplement rather than overwhelm existing grassroots initiatives by being knowledgeable of the local situation and timely in its assistance. Supporting these civic structures must be seen as an important factor in creating a sustainable peace.
We should also strengthen the capacity of local NGOs, or what you call the community-based organizations. I mean, these are the organizations which are closer to the people, closer to the marginalized people, people which the international community can never reach. So those people should be, their capacity should be built, should be encouraged, should be supported, and should be given a genuine partnership, not just using them as subcontractors, but they should be really used as genuine partners, and they should be encouraged, they should be, their capacity should be built.
To achieve a durable peace, there is a need to create mechanisms that deal with the day-to-day challenges of the security situation. Many organisations are trying to build peace at a local level. One of them is the British aid agency Action Aid. Since 1982, they have been working with the people of Sanag region in Somaliland.
Most of our staff are local staff who understand the area, who come from the area, and know how to, who to go to, the main actors, who are the, people to, the actual leaders of the community, and then bring those people together. Now, in that kind of situation where people are deprived, you don't want to show off. You don't want to be seen as someone who comes, like a distributor of resources, like, people who are in need. What you are trying to do is actually help these people from their own, help them utilize their own capabilities to resolve conflicts, to manage projects, to manage their own natural system. In doing that, you need facilitators. You don't need a lot of money even sometimes. Sometimes ideas can help. The fact that you are seen as neutral, that your objective is very clear, what you are doing is clear to everyone, how you are doing is very clear to everyone, and the fact that the ideas also come from the community, that they also decide what they want to do.
In Sanag, conflict between two clans had brought development to a halt. Action Aid was able to facilitate a meeting of the two clans at a workshop on conflict resolution in order to assist them in ironing out their differences. They did this through provision of fuel and money for transport of community members and elders to a central meeting place.
That workshop was actually bringing them, giving them a chance, a forum, a venue, and a chance to come together and talk about the issues and discuss what's the problem, analyze the situation, and then come with solutions on how to go forward, how to establish their common governance system, which means a governance system which belongs to all people, which all of them agreed. One of the first things Action Aid did was to support an ongoing grassroots peace process and reconciliation process. That has been very essential. So actually all the communities saw us as peacemakers, as people who want them to live in peace.
Somaliland has made a journey to peace by successfully breaking through the vicious circle of violence and destruction they found themselves in for so long. People have managed to create a situation in which all are gaining from peace and development.
What gives advantage to Somaliland is that they have touched the bottom of hell. They have done it, and in fact, not out of their own choice. They have actually touched it and gotten there to the depth of hell. They have pulled themselves out of it, not by force of arms, but by consultation, by consensus, by people talking to each other, by an attitude, okay, we will forgive for now, move on, and begin to develop things. That has been a lesson. I cannot say it's a guarantee in history, but it's the best lesson one can get.
What remains for Somaliland is to consolidate and strengthen at all levels the peace they have created, so that old grievances and hostilities are permanently laid to rest and a genuinely stable future can be achieved. But peace in Somaliland cannot survive indefinitely in the midst of what is still a turbulent region. The urgent challenge now is for other parts of the region to find their own way out of conflict and thus build a secure and solid foundation for lasting peace.
dadaaliguma baaqane muddaan hey amuurtaase dadeedayga weyn xaajadan doon isleeyahaye door iyo midkii daran sidii lagu dambaynayo docda loo socdiyo waxa la rabo ama la diidaayo dawgay ujeediyo rugtay dhegayso beesheennu dad weynoo isweydii rabbaan talo ka daahnayne